Okay. Yesterday the last thing we got to was bad advice. Now let's go to Perek Yud Tes Pasuk Tes Vav, 1915. Page 660. Okay, so the Torah says, Lo sasu ovel b'mishpat, third line from the top. Lo sasu ovel b'mishpat, do not perpetrate an injustice. How does he translate? Don't commit a perversion of justice. Lo sisa p'nei dol, don't favor a poor man. You might be inclined in court to favor the poor guy who doesn't have money. V'lo sedar p'nei gadol, don't favor somebody who's prominent. Sometimes you may feel that I'll rule in his favor. That means that even according to, you can't do one of two things. Let's say you have a rich man or a poor man, or a prominent man and a poor man come to you in court. So as a judge, you may be inclined to do one of two things. I know that the poor man owes the rich man, but I'll rule against the poor man. I'll take the money from the rich man and then I'll reimburse him. You can't do that. And you can't rule against, well, I don't want to insult the prominent man, so I'll rule against the poor man and then I'll reimburse him. You can't do that either. You have to judge favorably. So it says, Dovid HaMelech did both. He did tzedakah, he did justice and tzedakah. What did he do? If he ruled against the poor man, then you have to rule against him. The poor man had the rich man the money. He was the shomer and he was negligent. He's going to have to pay for it. But then Dovid HaMelech out of his own pocket would reimburse the poor man. That you could do. I rule against you, you have to pay him. But then afterwards, Dovid HaMelech does tzedakah and he takes the money out of his pocket and reimburses the poor man. That you're certainly allowed to do. But you can't distort justice even for the good of the cause. There are no Robin Hoods there are no Robin Hoods and certainly no Dennis Moores. Now, you know who Dennis Moore was, don't you? What? Dennis Moore? You never heard of Dennis Moore? Robin Hood you've heard of, right? He used to rob from the rich and give to the poor, right? You know who Dennis Moore is? Dennis Moore was in Monty Python. Well, was Dennis Moore who used to do the opposite. He robbed from the poor and gave to the rich. You never heard of Dennis? Dennis Moore, riding through the night. Dennis Moore, you know, which only Monty Python could possibly think of, right? So you get there are no Robin Hoods, there are no Dennis Moores. Number one, they were crazy. They were absolutely crazy funny. Monty Python. My brother would watch Monty Python. It used to be on educational television in America. See, in America, they thought it was Channel 11 was educational channel. Because in America, Americans think anything with an English accent is sophisticated, right? So anything with it was on educational television. So it was late at night. It was like at 10:30 at night. So my brother, my younger brother, he and his friends were absolute Monty Python. They were freaks. They would watch it for a half hour, then call each other up afterwards and review it. They would do chazara. I'm telling you, they memorized it. You couldn't say a sentence to my brother without him going into some Monty Python. By me, it blew hot and cold. They had to be in the mood for it, and generally the girls didn't like it. It was so abstract and so zany that it didn't. You know, it wasn't what what it was. So Dennis Moore was this guy. He robs from the rich and gives to the poor. He robs from the poor and gives to the rich. So that was okay. Then the Torah says, "V'tzedek tishvat amisecha," which you have to judge righteously. Now that's obvious. It's pretty obvious if you're a judge, you have to judge honestly and righteously. So what's the Torah telling you over here? So the Gemara says that this is telling you that you have to judge your fellow man favorably. Now, this is very tricky, to give what we call giving somebody the benefit of the doubt. And there are halachic guidelines on giving the benefit of the doubt. Number one is that if somebody, you have three categories of people. You have somebody who is basically known as a righteous person. You have somebody who's known as an evil person, a wicked person. And then you have your average happy-go-lucky Torah-observant Jew, the middle of the road. So if you see a righteous man doing an Avera, you have to give him the benefit of the doubt. So let's say you drive past the McDonald's, and there's a big tzaddik who's sitting in the McDonald's, he's eating a cheeseburger. You have to give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, you know it's a cheeseburger. Giving the benefit of the doubt doesn't mean that you change the facts. Don't say, well, he's sitting in a McDonald's and he's really a kosher burger. No, that's a cheeseburger. What benefit of the doubt means, either he must have some sort of ulcer condition, It was life-threatening situation. He has to get food into his system, so he jumped into McDonald's. Because there's nothing better for your ulcer than some French fries and a shake and a cheeseburger, right? So he was on the highway and there were no restaurants around, and he jumped in. Or he saw the big M by McDonald's and he thought it stands for Mahadran, right? So he made a mistake. Or some way or other that you could give him the benefit of the doubt. If you see an evil person and he's doing a mitzvah, then you could judge him and say he must have alternative motivation. Right? Sometimes you see these anti-religious, I'll give you a classic example, it's unfortunate. Sometimes you see these anti-religious secular politicians who all of a sudden they're at the kotel and they're with a yarmulke on at the wall praying. That's obviously a photo op, and he's trying to deceive somebody about something in order to get votes or that sort of thing. And there we know that he doesn't, he's got a track record of anti-this and anti-that and everything bad. You could assume that this is also for selfish motivation. The tricky one is the middle of the road. The middle of the road guy, your average happy-go-lucky Jew who is doing. Now I see the guy who this guy davens in shul all the time. He's a good guy. Once in a while he talks during davening. Once in a while speaks Lashon. But he's basically a good Jew, and he's in a McDonald's. So it's meritorious to give him the benefit of the doubt, but you are allowed to call it the way you see it. Right? He's obviously in a moment of weakness, right? That's what it means to give the benefit of the doubt. Now, the problem is that it's very difficult to give the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I see the guys eating at McDonald's. He certainly seems that the story. I tell you the story. This guy's sitting in a McDonald's, and he's eating a cheeseburger, and the Rav of the community drives by, and he looks over. He says, "There's Goldstein sitting in a McDonald's." And he goes over to the big glass window and he's staring at him, and Goldstein's chowing away, and he looks up and he sees the Rav and he kind of waves and he continues eating. And the Rav he's turning all colors, he's getting it. Finally Goldstein finishes, he comes out and he goes, "Goldstein, I mean, what were you doing? You didn't see me standing there?" He says, "I saw you." He says, "How could you? I mean, it's one thing, I wasn't even there, but right in front of me, how could you continue eating?" He says, "Look, I saw you there, I figured it's under rabbinic supervision, so I can continue eating." So you go, that works. So the question, when you see somebody doing something that looks really dodgy, as the English say, so how can you give them the benefit of the doubt? The answer is, let's say you lose your wallet. Where do you look? You're missing your wallet. Where do you look? If you ever been you check your pockets, you check drawers, you check the most illogical places. You check pants that you haven't worn in 20 years, and you check the drawers, and you go up to the attic, even though you don't even have an attic, and you check you check under the beds, over the beds, and you check the shower room, everywhere where a lot of people go into the shower room with their passport. You're missing this. Why do you check in illogical places? Because it's important to you to find it. If you really care about trying to find the benefit of the doubt about somebody, if you really look at it, so you even look in illogical places as well, right? You have to try to give, and it's not just by Averas, Let's say the bus driver drives past the stop, and you were there, so give him the benefit of that. Obviously somebody's blocking his vision or somebody's crowding him or something. You get on the bus and he closes the door on you. Okay, somebody didn't say it. So if if the bus driver looks and goes, "I got another one," okay, so then there's less room for benefit of the doubt. But if in life in general, the same way that we want people to give us the benefit of the doubt, because we're not always 100% in everything we do. The same way if we give now. The Gemara says there was a man, Gemara in Shabbos, there was a man who went up north for 3 years to work. After 3 years of working, he wanted to go home. It was Erev Yom Kippur, and he came to his employer, and he said, "Okay, can you pay me my salary?" He said, "I have no money." He said, "So give me my livestock." "I have no livestock." He says, "I'll take real estate, something." "I have no real estate, nothing." So he left very depressed. After Yontif, the guy loaded up his animals, and with all sorts of his salary and all sorts of goods, and he came down and he paid this man. And he said to him, "What were you thinking? What were you? You know what? Do we have a Gemara Shabbos? Is there a Gemara Shabbos over here? Do you have a Gemara Shabbos on the shelf, please? I want to read you do we have one over here on the shelf? Oh, okay. Oh, right there. So I turned to the wrong direction. Okay. Thank you very much. So the Gemara says, thank you. Watch this. Bingo. The Gemara says, the Gemara says that he was, where is it? Here we go. So the Gemara says that he came to him, it's on what page? Kuf Chav Zayin, 127 on Shabbos. So the man went home, and he brought it. He said, when you said, give me my salary, and I said, I don't have any money, what did you suspect? So he answered him, I figured maybe you had a chance to buy some merchandise cheap. And that's why you didn't have any cash on you. And when you said, give me some livestock, and I said, I don't have any livestock, what did you suspect? He says, I figure maybe your livestock was rented out to somebody else at the time. And when you said, give me some real estate, and I said, I don't have any, what did you suspect? He said, I figured that maybe you had sharecroppers on your property at the time. And when I said to you, give me some produce, what did you suspect? I said, maybe your produce isn't tithed properly. And when I said I don't have any pillows and blankets to give you, what did you suspect? I said, maybe you made them hektish. Right? So for everything that he said he doesn't have, he had a reason why he probably doesn't have it. He's got a good reason why it's not available right now. So he said to him, I swear that that's what it was, and I swear that that's what it was, and the same way that you judged me, gave me the benefit of the doubt, may Hashem give you the benefit of the doubt. And the Gemara says somebody who judges other people favorably, Hashem will judge him favorably. So first of all, the commentaries say over here that the employer was Rabbi Eliezer, and this employee was Rabbi Akiva. That's what the commentaries say. It was Rabbi Akiva. What's that?
I thought it was his grandfather. Hyrcanus' father.
It was Eliezer. Eliezer, he had a son named Hyrcanus. This is Eliezer, the father of Hyrcanus.
I thought Rabbi Eliezer's father.
He was Hyrcanus. No, that's in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, Medrash, Pirkei Eliezer, when Rabbi Eliezer himself went to learn Torah. He started learning Torah very late. According to one opinion in the Medrash, he was 22. The other opinion was 28. And his father cut him off. Sound familiar, guys? His father cut him. His father guy said, you go to yeshiva, I'm cutting you out of the inheritance. His father was a very wealthy man. So he went off, Eliezer went off to the yeshiva of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And eventually his father came to visit in the yeshiva. And when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was the Gadol Hador, when he saw Hyrcanus walk in, he told Eliezer to get up and give the drasha. So Eliezer got up and gave the drasha. His drasha became the first medrash that we have. It's called Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, 54 chapters. It's a long drasha. People had a longer attention span in those days. There were no smartphones. So he gave a long drasha. And after the drasha, his father couldn't believe that was his son who had succeeded so much in Torah. And so he gave him all the property and cut out everybody else. Right? That's what the Medrash says. Here, it's Rabbi Akiva and this Rabbi Eliezer. So he said, because you judged me favorably, may they judge you favorably, and Shemaim, they give you the benefit of the doubt also. Okay, that's what the Gemara says. There are two questions here. First of all, we see a rule. The rule is that if the way we judge other people, Hashem will judge us. Number one. And number two, there's a question. And the question is, well, if we give people the benefit of the doubt, Hashem will give us the benefit of it, except Hashem doesn't have any doubt. What does that mean, Hashem will give us the benefit of the doubt? What does that mean?
Judge us favorably, mercy.
But judge you favorably, but either it's good or it's not good. What does it mean, judge us favorably? What does that mean to judge? Hashem doesn't have any doubt. We have doubt because we don't know. What does it mean that Hashem has that He'll judge us favorably? Hashem doesn't have that. He doesn't have any doubt. He knows it was either good or it wasn't good. He knows what our motivation is. He knows exactly what we're doing.
The benefit of that is just doing good.
Yeah, but Hashem doesn't have any doubt about us.
He judges us where we're at right now, not where we will be.
Oh. The answer is good. The answer is, and it again goes to Rabbi Akiva. There's another Gemara that says that there was once a drought. And I want you to listen to this carefully. We've spoken about this in the past, but this affects us all personally, on a personal level, very much. And my wife just recently asked me, why is it so easy to give other people the benefit of the doubt and not your own family members the benefit of the doubt? It's a good question.
Yeah, you feel like you know your family.
So you feel like you know your family, but I feel like I know other people too. I told my wife there's a very big difference. because when I see somebody else doing something, it doesn't really affect me. It's just a question of whether or not I judge this guy benefit or not. But whatever he did didn't really affect me. But when my wife overloads the washing machine and it breaks, I could give her the benefit of the doubt, but I got to pay for the washing machine. So that's affecting me personally, right? That's affecting me personally. And when the wife sees the husband, I tell you, this woman comes over to her husband, she puts a cake on the table with one candle, she says, "Happy anniversary." The husband's like, "What's the anniversary? I mean, I forgot our real anniversary. We're married 29 years, I forgot that one 2 months ago. I mean, but what did I blow this time?" And he sees this cake with a candle. He says, "What's it an anniversary of?" She goes, "It's the 1-year anniversary since I asked you to fix the kitchen cabinet. Happy anniversary," right? Which is a very nice way for women to communicate things, by the way. Right? That's a lot better than, "Well, when are you going to fix that?" That's a very nice. And you know what the end of the story is, don't you? He eats the cake and forgets about the cabinet anyway. And eventually she comes with the cake. Eventually she probably comes with the cake with 120 candles. It's been 120 years since I asked you to fix the cabinet. So the answer goes to a different girl. Stay with us because it's get a little involved. Maybe we can open the door. Rachamim, open the door so we get this gets a little involved. There's a Gemara in Tainus and Daf Chof Hey in Tainus. The Gemara says that there was a drought. And Rabbi Eliezer, the same Rabbi Eliezer, how do you like that? The same Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer went and he became the Shliach Tzibur. He davened, it was a fast day, they were fasting because there was a drought. And he davened and nothing happened. And then Rabbi Akiva replaced him and he said Avinu Malkeinu, which we said today, the Avinu Malkeinu, who of you enjoyed Bahab. And he said Avinu Malkeinu and it started raining. So the people started murmuring. Well, I guess Rabbi Eliezer isn't as great as Rabbi Akiva because Rabbi Eliezer tried and he didn't make it. Then Rabbi Akiva did, and it started raining. So a heavenly voice, thanks, Phil. A heavenly voice came out and said, it's not because he's greater than him. It's not because Rabbi Akiva is greater than Rabbi Eliezer. It's because Rabbi Akiva is ma'avir al midosav. Ma'avir al midosav means he's willing to overlook. That means when somebody wrongs him, he's willing to overlook the wrongs. Which automatically begs a question, which is, if you're a person who was willing to overlook the wrongs and somebody else isn't, then you are a greater person. The heavenly voice says, not because Rabbi Akiva is greater, it's because he has this quality. Well, if you have that quality, you are greater, right? Okay. So the answer is that the heavenly voice is talking about their Torah scholarship. And he's saying it's not because Rabbi Akiva is a greater scholar, which is usually the first thing you look for. Rabbi Eliezer was just a great, he was the Rebbe. He was Rabbi Akiva's Rebbe. So it's not because Rabbi Eliezer is greater than Rabbi Akiva. It's because Rabbi Akiva has this quality. Now what does that mean? What does that mean? You think Rabbi Eliezer wasn't a nice man? Now, of course Rabbi Eliezer was a nice man. What it means is that there are two paths in life, two approaches in life. There's one approach is the approach of truth. Remember we spoke about this? There's one which is the approach of truth, and the other the approach of shalom, of peace. If you take my parking space every day, I have the right to come over and say, "Could you please stop taking my?" I could insist on my right. If you cut ahead of me in line, I could insist on my right. So don't cut ahead of me in line. And I'm true, I have every right to do that. The problem is, not a problem, but the way we behave means that there's going to be an equal response from Shemayim. If I don't cut anybody slack because I insist on my rights, which is emes, I insist on my rights, and I don't cut anybody any slack. So when I'm davening for rain, and we don't deserve rain, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't cut us slack either. Rabbi Eliezer was the path of truth. He came from Shammai. His approach to life was the path of truth, which is fine. But then that doesn't leave any slack to get a parallel response from Shemayim. Rabbi Akiva was Mavir al Amidos. He's willing to overlook. So if the person willing to overlook then davens for the Amud, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, well, you don't really deserve, but since you overlook, then I'll overlook as well. And that's what it means when it comes to judging favorably. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have any doubt. But like Meir said, there you activate some sort of, when it says Hashem judges us favorably, That means you activate some sort of midas harachamim, some sort of mercy, that can't be activated if, in other words, if I judge people and I call it the way I see it, and I never cut anybody slack in my mind. In my mind, I don't cut anybody any slack. So then there's no room to cut me slack. But if I'm already trying to find the favor, find the good in other people, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wherever there's room for manipulation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say, okay, we'll activate it for you. Because in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's judgment, there's often a range of possibilities. I do certain things that are good and certain things that are not so marvelous. So there's a range over there. Which one is it? Which button is HaKadosh Baruch Hu we're going to push? I activate that button. We activate those counter responses. Yeah.
Why is it wrong to not want truth and justice from Hashem to be shown towards me?
Because we wouldn't be able. The Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world originally with midas hadin, and when he saw that the world can't exist with midas hadin, he went to midas harachamim. We don't want HaKadosh Baruch Hu to hold us to the letter of the law. Is that like forcible kiruv over there? What are they doing? You're gonna wear tefillin today, buddy. No. Put him in the tzitzis room. That enough, buddy? We'll put another pair on you if you don't get it. So listen, we got to resort to any techniques we can. We want to save your souls. So what do you call it? We have to realize that that's the way it works. And we know where we're holding. We know we have our flaws. We know what our flaws are. We don't want it because he's going to focus on our flaws. There's no hope. Or we try our best. We're trying to get better. We're always trying to improve. But wait on the course, the path of improvement. So there are little stumbling blocks along the way. Okay, I want to go on. In Pasuk Yud Ches, it says this is also fascinating. It says Lo sisna es achicha bilvavecha, shouldn't hate your brother in your heart. Now this means that if you have resentment against somebody, don't be two-faced. Yosef's brothers are praised because they hated Yosef, and they wouldn't even speak to him peacefully. That means if I don't like it, sometimes I'm wrong for hating somebody, but at least I don't pretend that I don't. Number one. Then it says, Hocheach tochiach es amisecha, you should rebuke your fellow man. Velo sisa olav chet, but do not. How does it? I want a precise translation. Do not bear a sin because of him. That means you have to rebuke your fellow man, but don't turn it into an avera for yourself. And what that means is that when you rebuke somebody, number one, don't rebuke him in public because you can embarrass him in public. And even in private, when you rebuke somebody, if he starts turning colors and he's embarrassed, that could be sinful. Unless you are an authority person who has a responsibility for this person's growth. And sometimes you have to really let him have it in a way that he may be embarrassed, but in one way or another, you have to call him out on it. Now, that's the general approach over here. The word hocheach, I heard from Rav Malevsky, Zichrono Livracha, he said, there's a pasuk that says, Shifchi kamayim libech, pour out your heart. Anybody know how the pasuk continues? Nochach pnei Hashem, opposite of God. Pour your heart out in front of God. Nochach. The word hocheach, tochiach, is related to the Hebrew word nochach. And what that means is, what that means is that when you rebuke somebody, the most efficient form of rebuke is to place the person in front of himself. That means this is who you are, and this behavior is not becoming for a person like you. Whenever you have children in the house, the best form of rebuke to a child. First of all, I want to tell you another story with the Chafetz Chaim. That there was one of these traveling preachers, and he came to the Chafetz Chaim, and he said to the Chafetz Chaim, I go from town to town in Europe. That's what they used to do, go to town, giving drushas and giving musar to the people. So he said to the Chafetz Chaim, I go to town and I give these drushas, I preach in these towns. I don't feel my words are being effective. So the Chafetz Chaim said to him, is it, what's your style? Is it fire and brimstone? He says, you bet. He says, do you yell at the people? He says, you bet. He says, can I ask you a question? Did you put on tefillin this morning? He says, of course I put on tefillin this morning. Yeah, of course I put on tefillin. He says, did you yell when you put on your tefillin? This guy looks at him and goes, what is it? What's he asking me? Of course I didn't yell when I put. Why would I yell when I put on my tefillin? He says, why would you yell when you give people rebuke? He says, what do you mean? He says, well, tefillin is a mitzvah deoraisa. It's a Torah command to put on tefillin, and you didn't yell. To give rebuke, kocheach tochech es hamisecha, is a mitzvah deoraisa also, so why would you yell? That means when you hear the word rebuke, you think of the principal getting in one of the students' faces, right? That's what you think, really blasting into him. That's not what rebuke is. Rebuke is helping a person to grow. In the West side, the most efficient way is helping a person to grow is not by yelling, because nobody likes being yelled at. And usually when you yell at, when you get yelled at, all that happens is you yell back, and you reject what the person is saying. What you want to do is take the person and show, this is you, and this is what you're capable of, and this behavior is not becoming of you. That's why with kids in the house, sometimes they can tick you off so bad, so you don't have the presence of mind to maintain you have to maintain the presence of mind to do this. But if a kid does something wrong, you find out that a kid did something wrong in school, you say to a kid, a boy like you doesn't do that. You hear what you just said? Instead of saying you're a bad boy, which the psychologists say, oh, you never say. Yeah, that's fine. You can say it once in a while. Yeah, you can say it once in a while. But what you really want to do is to make him understand that a boy like you doesn't do that. So now you're telling him who he is, that the behavior is not becoming of him. Then you give him a good one. But what do you got? A boy. By the way, when it comes to spanking, that's what I tell you. So when it comes to spanking as a parent, first of all, you're not allowed to hit a child out of anger. How do you like that? The Vilna Gaon says if you hit a kid when you're angry, then it's no different than hitting another person. You're never allowed to hit a kid out of anger. Yeah, can't hit him out of anger. If you're angry, there's one of the Briskers. I don't remember which Brisker it was. He once went up to his son and he slapped him across the face. He said, "What was that for?" He said, 2 weeks ago you were chutzpahdik." He says, "So why are you slapping me now?" He says, "Because I've been angry for 2 weeks. I finally not angry. Now I can give you a slap." And it's true. And if you're angry, you're not allowed to hit them when you're angry. When I used to patch my kids, I didn't, not too often. I mean, there's got to be some job satisfaction as a parent, but not too often. Somebody once asked me, "Are you allowed to patch your kids on Shabbos?" I said, "Hey, that's my Oneg Shabbos. Don't take that away from me." I actually know the son of a very big Rosh Yeshiva. He himself today is a Rosh Yeshiva. He's the son of one of the Gedolei Ador. And he told me personally that his father, he used to get patched on a regular basis by his father. His father never got angry, ever got angry. And he told me that every Motzei Shabbos, his father wouldn't patch him on Shabbos, but every Motzei Shabbos he would take him across the lap and he would say, in L'Shem Mitzvahs Chinuch, I am now fulfilling the mitzvah of Chinuch, and then he would give it to him. Because that's the job of the father. When I had a patch for my kids, none of my kids got it too often. I have 4 boys. None of them got it too often. But you don't have to. If you're doing it more than twice or 3 times in a kid's lifetime, then something's wrong. But on those rare occasions when I did have to patch him, I would take him into the back room. I'd say, "Okay, I'm going to give you 4 patches now." And I would breathe and make sure to breathe. Because see, what happens is if you start patching without a number, you could get into a rhythm. Right? You're giving him, and then and as it goes on, and then last week was the incident with the noodles, and the week before was with your sister, and there's a right, and you don't want, you could go up till 6:13, it doesn't. So what my general number was 4. I would take him in the back room and say, "Okay, now I'm going to patch you 4 times." I would take him across my lap, and I make sure to breathe. You don't want to grit your teeth. Yeah, there shouldn't be one of those. Then you're angry. I just like that, and give them the patch. Make sure it's controlled, because if not, then what's that? A patch is usually a patch. Yeah, a patch is a slap. Patch is a slap. The tradition is on the backside, right? The mothers always especially mothers with little boys. It's just like they kind of reach and grab whatever they could reach. My mother would usually grab my ear or grab my. I could usually escape. But usually it's one of those twists up. Whatever they could reach. Mother's something else. With a little boy, the father has to. There's certain times they have to be patched. One time you must patch a child. Again, modern day psychologists notwithstanding, they probably need to be patched themselves. But what do you call it? If a kid runs into the street, kid does something dangerous, a little kid does something dangerous, you have to patch him. You have to patch him. If you don't patch him, you're being irresponsible. A kid has to know. My oldest son was 3 years old, maybe 3 years old, maybe 4. I think he was a little over 3. We're standing right outside my house, and we're on a very quiet side street, and he was standing right by the curb. And we told him, whenever you go on the street, and he's standing right by the curb. His mom was on the curb. And I was standing there, and I said, don't walk, don't step into the street. You don't go into the street. And he looked at me, and I could see the Yetzer Hara dancing in his eyes. And I could see he's going through a tremendous test right now. And he's just looking at me, and you could see, should I or shouldn't I type of thing. And he took one foot, and he just went, click, right off the curb into the street. So I took him into the house, and I gave him a good patching, so he'll know you don't go into the street. To this day, he's 32. He doesn't go into the street without. He doesn't. You have to know that a kid has to know. He has to make it as soon as he sees a street, he should go like, oh, street, and he should do like that. Right? They should make an association. That's if a kid plays with fire, kid touches electricity, anything dangerous, you have to patch him for. Other things, it's very difficult to know when. And it shouldn't be too often. It really shouldn't be too often. I'm making a lot of jokes here. It should not be too often. That's not the way to do it. It's often the easiest thing and the most, especially when a father's frustrated, you just start lashing out. That's not what he called. That's not what. And sometimes, Kodesh Baruch Hu, as parents, never gave us experience before as parents. That's one of the challenges of being a parent. It's not like you don't go to parent school. Right, it won't help you. You can listen here, listen there. It doesn't matter. On location is your first chance. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us instincts as parents. Otherwise nobody would have kids. God gave us instincts as parents. You have to do the best you can. Are you going to make mistakes? Yeah, we make mistakes, but you try not to make too many mistakes. But at the end of the day, that's hochech tochech esamisecha. Look at the next pasuk. By the way, don't go around giving people rebuke. Right? People don't want to be rebuked. Nobody wants to be rebuked. And if you are going to be rebuked, make sure you build somebody up to do it. Right? A guy like you should eat with a fork. That's what I think. But you're not going to be. It's not. Most people resent it. The Gemara says there's a statement in the Gemara that says nobody nowadays knows how to take rebuke, and nobody nowadays knows how to give rebuke. And that's written at the time of the Gemara. The Gemara says somebody walks over you and says you should take that splinter out from between your teeth. Somebody else says, we'll take that crossbeam out from between your eyes. Mm-hmm. That's the response. In other words, if you point out my flaw, I'll point out a bigger flaw by you. People get very defensive. It's only somebody bigger than us and somebody that we respect that we accept rebuke from. If my roommate tells me, if your roommate says to you, you shouldn't speak Lashon Hara. You're a walking gossip columnist. What are you telling me not to speak Lashon Hara? If the Chafetz Chaim would say don't speak Lashon Hara, that's something else because he didn't speak Lashon Hara. So we're very, very defensive. People are very defensive people. Everybody wants to show that they're a successful person. Nobody likes their flaws. Nobody likes their flaws pointed out. One more point here I want to get to. Hold for 1 second, John. Lo sikom velo sitor es b'nei amecha. You should not take revenge and you should not bear a grudge. You should love your fellow as yourself, Ani Hashem. Now here we have the idea of not taking revenge. So the first thing here is, what's wrong with revenge? I mean, there's an expression, sweet revenge. Right? Nothing is sweeter than revenge. There's nothing like, right? There's nothing better in life. We had an Israeli guy once at our house in Chicago. So my father said to him, a young Israeli guy, my father said to him, can I ask you a question? Why do people drive like lunatics in Israel? So the guy laughs. He goes, listen, if I'm driving on the highway and a guy passes me up, I have to pass him back. Simple as that. There you go. There you have it. So revenge, a little bit. What's it called? A little payback. It's always good. Okay, what's wrong with it? Number one. Number two. There are two aspects to this. The Gemara gives an example. If I come to your house and ask to borrow your shovel, and you say no, and then you come to me and ask to borrow my shovel, I say no. That's revenge. If you come to me and ask to borrow my shovel, I'll say, you can borrow my shovel. I'm not like you who doesn't lend out shovels. Then I'm also transgressing because I'm clearly bearing a grudge. That's the second part. That's the lositor. Lositor means don't bear the grudge. Don't keep the grudge. And therefore, you're obligated, again, it's a very difficult thing, obviously. You're obligated to wipe it out of your mind. Guy didn't lend me, and therefore, this is where judging favorably comes in. Where you go to a guy and say, can I borrow your shovel? He says, no, judge him favorably. Maybe the shovel is close to breaking. Maybe he's going to need it to shovel his own snow, even though he lives in Florida. Maybe the guy's going to what? Maybe the guy's going to what? Maybe the guy can't open the door because somebody's not, somebody's not fully dressed in the house and he doesn't want to open the door. It's not sneezing. It could be a million and one things. And if you give him the benefit of the doubt, then you'll have less trouble less trouble challenge bearing the grudge. But that's the halacha. You got to wipe it out and you got to go to the okay. Now, what's wrong with taking revenge? What's wrong with taking revenge? Obviously, you didn't lend me your shovel. Why should I lend you my shovel? Right? What's wrong with that? I'm going to take it now. You know what it feels like. What's the answer? The answer is you're making a mistake in thinking that the cause of your trouble is this person. That means this person, let's say something happens, some guy puts a brick through your window. I'm going to take revenge. I can put a brick through a window. No, you're making a mistake. It's not him who's the cause of your trouble. The cause of your trouble is HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent him. He chose to be the one, and he's going to be accountable to God because you're not allowed to put bricks through people's windows. That's bad midos, right? So you can't put bricks through people's windows. It's the same reason that Paro was punished. Why was Paro punished? It was a decree that the Jewish people should be enslaved for 400 years. Yeah, but nobody told you to be the enslaver. You chose to do it. So you chose to be Hashem's vehicle. So you're accountable also. So a person who takes revenge, when you take revenge, you're making a statement. You're saying that the cause of my trouble is this person. And it's not. The cause of your trouble is that you're the cause of your own trouble. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that this guy will do or won't do something for you. And now by taking revenge, you're shifting it. The cause is not the person. The cause is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, you have to keep that straight. What if a guy puts a brick through your window, you are allowed to go to Beis Din. You're allowed to take him to court. That's not revenge. That's your legal right. But to go and take a brick and put it through his window simply so he should know how it feels, what you call, it's not revenge. I just want to teach him a lesson. Right? No, it's not teaching him a lesson. That's revenge. I told you I once hit my brother. I didn't hit him. I flicked him. I flicked his ear real hard. He was eating an orange. He needed flicking, right? So I think I flicked his ear. So he got up. He chased me around the house, and he had me cornered. He's younger than me. He was when he was little, I could beat him at will. I could hit him at will. But he got bigger, so he learned how to take the punch because I was always beating that, and I couldn't take the punch. I was a big chicken, and all of a sudden he started hitting back, and it hurt. So I ran. So he had me cornered. That was my best fighting position, was running and hit in the back and run. And so I flicked his ear. So I don't know what I flicked his ear. And then he got up and he chased me around. He had me cornered. And he had his fist up in the air. So I said to him, "You can't." I figured I'll appeal to his religious sensitivities. I said, "You can't hit me." He said, "Why not?" I said, "It's revenge." So he looked at it and goes, "It's not revenge. I'm starting from new," right? and just remember, black and blue rhymes with new, right? And that was it. So that's revenge. That's revenge, right? You could call it, I put the brick through his window just to teach him a lesson. No. To teach him a lesson is revenge. That's an Isser D'Oraisa. That you're not allowed to do. Now, somebody had a question. What were you asking?
So what alternative strategy do we have to remove the hidden hatred for our fellow, if not rebuke?
Oh, excellent. How do you rebuke hidden hatred? Rebuke has nothing to do with hidden hatred or express. I see somebody doing wrong. I don't necessarily hate him. I want to help the guy. So sometimes I want to help the guy by pointing out his flaw. How do you remove a dislike of a person? I once asked this to a very big rabbi who today is one of the Gedolei Ador. I was in the yeshiva, and there was a certain guy in the yeshiva who annoyed me. I simply didn't like the guy. I didn't like the guy. And I asked this Rav, and then later on he gave a talk in the Beis Medrash, and he actually mentioned this question. He didn't mention my name, he mentioned the question. He didn't mention the other guy's name either. He said, somebody asked me, what if there's somebody you don't like? Somebody you don't like, what do you do? You know what you do? Do something for him. And where do we find a source for that in the Torah? Torah says if you see a guy his donkey is buckling under the load. So you have an obligation to help him, right? So it says, what happens if you see two people? Two people have donkeys and they're buckling under their load. One is a friend of yours and one's an enemy. Who do you help? Help your enemy. You know why? They'll turn him into a friend. Why? Because the definition that everybody knows, the definition of love is a result of giving. When you give, that's when you start to love. That's what's right. And first of all, there's a practical reason. That this guy, you help him, I don't like this guy. I see him in shul all the time. I don't like what he thinks of himself. I don't think he thinks much of me. I don't think much of him. Then you see him with his donkey, is unbuckling under the load, and you come over and you help him. The next thing you know, you see, he says, hey, he says, thanks a lot. Yeah, you want to have a beer together? And next thing you know, the guy's not such a bad guy after all. You break the ice. More than that is because the ultimate love relationship, who loves the most? Who do you think loves somebody the most? What would you say? You said, leave Hashem out of the picture for a second. Leave Hashem. What's that? A mother to a child. Nothing like the mother's love of a child. Why is that? Because the mother the mother loves the child even more than the father does. Why? She's got a 9-month head start.
What do you mean? We're holding them all our lives.
She's got a 9-month head start. And so she is given to the child and born this child for 9 months already. And then children are takers, they're not givers. Parents are givers. Imagine the following. A child loses a parent, Rahman al-Islam, or a parent loses a child. Who's more devastated? Theoretically, the child should be more devastated because they're completely dependent on the parent. But it's not like that. A parent loses a child, Rahman al-Islam, is totally devastated. Why is that? Because the parent is given to the child. Giving to somebody else, what happens is, we all love ourselves. We all love ourselves. Everybody loves themselves. When you give to somebody else, you see yourself in that person. There's part of me over there. And therefore, to break that bond, the person has a resentment towards somebody else, give him something. Do something for that person. That'll doesn't mean he'll be your best friend necessarily. But that's the road to that starts the path.
What about people that you don't like? You just don't really think they're good for you. Like you don't want them. You know, there's somebody that I kind of know. He used to be
A negative influence, you mean?
Yeah.
Good question. A negative influence, you have no. A guy's a negative influence, they should stay away. You know, I could give him something I like. That's a problem. Negative influence, we usually like too. We like too much. Yeah, that's a problem. We love the negative influences. That's the problem. Yeah, we all have friends who our parents were nervous about, right? Everyone has a friend. Ooh, I don't like hanging around that guy, right? No. We're not talking about negative influence. We might want to help the guy that he himself should improve, and even that needs to care because sometimes when sometimes you try to help him, and he'll pull you down. So yeah, that person has to be careful. But we're not talking about a guy who's a negative influence. You have to stay away from. All right, to be continued, gentlemen.